UFC 308 Topuria vs Holloway is coming up next weekend, and today, guys, I have the full card breakdown for you with timestamps if you'd like to skip to any part of the video. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Guys, we're going to be diving into these fights as much as we could get. We're going to be predicting them, talking about fighters that I'd like to see win. We're going to take a look at betting odds, any perhaps props that are out right now, which usually they're not because I'm recording this video the Thursday before you're actually watching it. Regardless, guys, timestamps will be there if you'd like to skip to any part of the video. I'm very, very excited for this card. Let's get into it. Now, guys, let's start off with the first fight, that being Kennedy Nzechukwu taking on Chris Barnett. Now, as far as I'm aware, Chris Barnett's recent pullout, the reason for it hasn't been disclosed as to why, but this is something that's very important to consider for Chris Barnett. We don't know if it was an injury. We don't know if he fell ill. And more importantly, he's going through another weight cut because he does cut weight to make heavyweight, and that's very important to note for Chris Barnett. That with Chris Barnett as well. He has not fought since 2 years, He hasn't fought since 2 years, and he's 38 years old right now. So what's going on with Chris Barnett right now is working against him. If anybody can shed some light in the comment section down below, I would appreciate it, because I haven't found out the reason why Chris Barnett actually pulled out. But anyways, we might as well start talking about Chris Barnett. There's not a ton of breakdown with Chris Barnett because he's a weird fighter with good power and somehow, looks athletic while he's fighting. He looks like he's athletic and speedy heavyweight, which just doesn't make sense for his build. The big weakness that Chris Barnett does have in his game, though, is that pressure can get to him. Kennedy Nzechukwu, on the other hand, the opposite of pressure. He is a decently well-rounded fighter. He pretty much just relies on his power to get the win. Otherwise, he'll sit there, low volume, he'll barely throw anything. And he did throw a little bit more in his last fight. He's coming off of a 2-fight skid, that being the Dustin Jacoby, where he ended up getting finished, and the split decision to Ovince St. Preux. I know that a lot of people were talking about Kennedy Nzechukwu winning this fight. I thought it was close enough not to care, but I did edge it out to Kennedy Nzechukwu, in my opinion. So, to be honest with you guys, I'm not necessarily impressed with either fighter. I gotta pick, though, Kennedy Nzechukwu, because Chris Barnett, like I said, he's going through another weight cut. He's coming off of 2 years not fighting. I don't know why he's been off. He's almost 40 years old. I think all of that is working against him, and I will be picking Kennedy Nzechukwu to win the fight over here. Let's take a look over at OddsJam to see what people, or not even what people, what the odds have to say about this. So you can see that Chris Barnett is a huge underdog right now, which, to be honest with you, it makes sense. I don't trust Chris Barnett, and I don't know why. Again, I wish I could know why. I wish I knew why he was off, and I wish I had that information for you guys, but I have no clue. But I would like to see Chris Barnett win this fight, man. He's always an absolute blast to watch. I hope he comes onto the scene, does a backflip, ends up knocking out Kennedy Nzechukwu. That'd be hilarious. I like Chris Barnett, man. Now, guys, let's continue on. Speaking of inactivity, there are two fighters here that I would like to see a lot more of. We have Said Nurmagomedov taking on Daniel Santos. Both of these guys haven't fought in a little while. Said Nurmagomedov going on a year, and how long has it been since Daniel Santos? It's been over a year. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. Yeah, they're two really fun fighters, to be honest with you. I don't know why. Again, either of them have been off, but regardless, it's a fantastic matchup on a fantastic card. Said Nurmagomedov, he is a very flashy, creative, fun striker who uses kicks very well, especially when he's at range. He does have skills on the ground, but he can be taken down, and that could be worked against him. But he also, once he's on the ground, he really is no joke in that department. So Daniel Santos, on the other hand, he's just a well-rounded fighter, to be honest with you. You can pretty well do it all. In my opinion, though, Daniel Santos does still need to improve kind of that most aspects of his game to fight the top contenders, but so far he's been improving. He fights well. He's living up to the hype so far, but I just question how far he's going to go in the division. Right now with Said Nurmagomedov, I'm confident that he can hang with a lot of the top guys. Daniel Santos, I don't know about that just yet. On the other side of the coin, though, Said Nurmagomedov had his first loss that we've seen in the UFC against Jonathan Martinez, at least that I can remember. I don't think he's lost in the UFC. But anyways, Jonathan Martinez beat him, and then he came back and got a really nice win over Muin Gafarov. Daniel Santos is riding a pretty nice 2-fight win streak, and what I do like about this is both of them have been, pretty experienced in the UFC so far, and they've both really, really looked good. Said Nurmagomedov especially, taking on some really good opponents. When it comes to this matchup, I could see Daniel Santos maybe coming in with a takedown approach, a BJJ approach, but I just think that Said Nurmagomedov's a little bit better than him at this point in his career. Daniel Santos certainly has potential, but I am going to pick Said Nurmagomedov to get the win. I think he's going to be a better striker, and I'm not so confident that Daniel Santos would be able to take him down, and even if he does get him to the ground, I don't think that Saeed's going to really be in trouble, but I like both fighters. I like watching them both. I don't really have a preference who wins this fight personally. I'm going to be picking, like I said, Saeed Nurmagomedov, and you can see over on Odds Jam over here, Saeed Nurmagomedov is sitting at a decently sizable favorite over here. That makes sense in my opinion. I think he's just going to win a pretty clean decision in my opinion. I don't even think he's going to finish Daniel Santos because, again, Daniel Santos is a pretty good fighter in himself. All right, guys, let's move on over to the next fight. Another very exciting fight and a very tough fight to break down in my opinion. We have Bruno Silva taking on Ismail Naurdiev. Now, Bruno Silva, he has been on a little bit of a skid recently, as you can tell, man. His only win in his last 5 being against Brad Tavares, but it is important to note that I don't know if he's necessarily better than his 23-11 record, but he has taken on some absolute killers. Just look at his last 3 over here. In the Chris Weidman fight, getting eye poke knocked out didn't make any sense, but losing to Chris Weidman is not a good look. As much as I love Chris Weidman is kind of done. But anyways, let's talk about this. So Bruno Silva is a decently well-rounded fighter. He has really good power. He's pretty hittable on the other side of the coin, though. Not a ton to break down with Bruno Silva, but Ismail Naurdiev, and I apologize for pronouncing that wrong, he is also a well-rounded fighter, but he is primarily a striker. He has fast combinations, he has explosive movement, he has great counters. His only weakness is at times he can fade later on as the fight goes on. He is coming off of a win entering the UFC. I don't know why he got signed to the UFC to fight Bruno Silva, maybe for this card, but regardless, it should be a pretty good matchup. I think that both guys kind of seem to be on the same level. I'm going to be picking Ismail to get the win over here. The biggest reason being Bruno Silva leaving such a bad taste in my mouth in his last performance. I know the knockout was ridiculous, okay? But it was not a good look. He let Chris Weidman control him for 2 rounds. And there's really no excuse for that in the middleweight division because Chris Weidman is washed. He's done. He didn't look good himself. I don't understand that. And Bruno Silva has had good performances. Maybe something was wrong, but I gotta think he's 35 years old now. Maybe the damage is catching up to him. Maybe he's past his prime. I'm not going to be picking Bruno Silva again. And at least Ismail I can trust to come in. He'll be pretty explosive. Bruno Silva's a little bit hittable. I think it's a close fight, but I will be picking Ismail to get the win here. Definitely not going to be betting on this one. And I kind of hope Bruno Silva gets the job done, man. He really, really needs a win, and he's a very underappreciated fighter in the UFC. You can see that Odds Jam kind of agrees with me on this over here, the average odds being minus 104 for Bruno Silva. I think it's a very, very close fight, and I think the odds are reflecting that, guys. It's going to be a really, really fun one to watch, though. All right, guys, let's continue on up the card. Another fight that I'm incredibly excited for. We have Farid Basharat taking on Victor Hugo. Now, unlike many MMA fans, I am not personally off of the Basharat train. I know that Farid is still unbeaten, but still, a lot of people are really counting out the Basharat brothers, in my opinion. I love watching them. Victor Hugo has a ton of promise in himself, and I'm going to start with Victor Hugo, okay? Victor Hugo is a very, very strong finisher, both on the feet and on the ground. He can KO you, like I said, either on the feet or on the ground. Another thing that I really like about Victor Hugo, and I think it's something important to note, is that he does a really, really good job listening to his coaches during fights. And while this could be a good thing, there's times that I notice with Victor Hugo that he spends a little bit too much time paying attention to them because there's a little bit of a lull in the action. One day that's going to work against him. One day he's going to get caught in a submission or knocked out while he's looking at his corner. But it's just something that I've noticed about Victor Hugo the more that I watch him. But anyways, whenever I break down Farid Basharat, I just love the way that Paul Felder describes him. He is a Taekwondo fighter who is very patient, technical, and methodical. That describes him completely perfectly. He can strike, he can move, he can wrestle, grapple. The guy can do it all. The only thing is with the Basharat, or excuse me, specifically Farid Basharat, is he lacks power. Or at least some power. You know, no matter how many times he hits you, it doesn't seem to have like too damaging of an effect. But other than that, he is a very, very complete fighter. If Tapology has the correct odds right there and Farid being a minus 450 favorite, I think that's crazy. I'm picking Farid Basharat to win. Long story short, guys, I'm picking Farid Basharat to win this fight. I think that he's just going to be better than Victor Hugo everywhere. But Basharat can be hit, and Hugo can absolutely KO you. I just think that Basharat is better. That's all. I think he's better in all aspects of MMA, but he certainly could get caught. And I'm a big fan of Farid Basharat. I hope he gets a job done. like we were talking about, I think that he's a very underappreciated fighter. You can see OddsJam has Farid Basharat at a minus 497 favorite. I think Victor Hugo is absolutely an underdog opportunity. That's something that we're going to be talking about in the betting guide. Like, I'm picking Farid Basharat, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he should be this big of a favorite. Like I said, he lacks power. I don't know if he's going to get the, I don't know if he's going to finish Victor Hugo, and Victor Hugo is going to have 3 rounds to catch Farid Basharat. I do like Basharat in saying all that, though. It's just trying to think, like, if you want to cash in on some underdog, I can see that one being an upset. But regardless, Farid Basharat is my pick to win this fight. All right, guys, let's move on to the next fight, and another fight that I am so excited to watch because I'm very interested to see how Mateusz Rebecki is going to come back after taking his first loss in the UFC. He's taken on Myktybek Orolbai, and this matchmaking, man, whoever matchmade this card, this is really, really well done. Myktybek Orolbai, he is a subpar striker with good wrestling, insane pressure, and good cardio to get along with it, but in saying that, we have recently learned that pressure could get to Orolbai just a little bit, but other than that, he has looked really, really good so far. I've been watching this guy since the LFA days. He seems to be the real deal, Myktybek Orolbai. Mateusz Rebecki, on the other hand, also a grappler. He'll dive at you from anywhere. He really, really pushes the pace and will always come forward. We finally saw him run into Diego Ferreira, and I'm very proud of that, by the way, because I said, guys, don't count out Diego Ferreira. The dude, no matter how old he's getting, still has it. But anyways, I want to talk about this for a second because a lot of people have jumped off the Mateusz Rebecki hype train. First of all, no shame in losing to Diego Ferreira. In this fight, he had a pretty good, first few minutes to a round. His pressure was nice. The feints were looking really good. They were beautiful. But Diego's counters, and they were working. He just completely took over as the fight went on. I have a problem because I don't want to discount Diego Ferreira's win. I'm not ready to count out Mateusz Rebecki because that loss could have happened because if you remember back in the second round, both of his eyes were shut. Both of them. I think that's important to note, and I think that's definitely could be a reason why he kept getting caught with the same counters over and over again. If he loses again, maybe it's time to talk about maybe there was a fraud check in Mateusz Rebecki. But even then, man, I don't even want to say fraud check because he's looked pretty good, and he fought some really good guys so far. Maybe depending on how you look at Roosevelt Roberts, but you get what I'm saying. Honestly, Mateusz Rebecki has taken on some good competition. He's shown that he has all of the skills in the world to push forward in the UFC. In saying that, though, I have been more impressed with what Myktybek Orolbai has done so far. I'm very interested to see what these grappling exchanges are going to be like. And I gotta say, I think that Orolbai might get the better of it. We also have to question how Mateusz Rebecki is going to come back after his first loss like that. As of right now, I'm going to be picking Myktybek Orolbai, but again, I think it's a little bit of a close fight. Let's take a look at what OddsJam has to say over here. Myktybek Orolbai is a decently sized favorite. Again, I think it's going a little bit too much, and we do have a round prop over here, over 2.5 rounds at minus 153. I actually don't hate that, to be honest with you. They're two really, really, really tough fighters, and I don't really see anyone finishing each other. If I had to guess, that would go to a decision. Interesting. Very, very interesting. But I am going to pick Orolbai for that fight. All right, guys, let's continue on up the card. Over to Aslan taking on Raffael Cerqueira. Apologize if I'm pronouncing that name wrong. I actually had to go back, and it's important to note, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're taking any sort of, betting advice from me, I always want to be completely honest on this channel, guys. Always want to be completely honest with you. In the UFC, I'm quite knowledgeable, and even outside the UFC, I'm quite knowledgeable on the vast majority of fighters, okay? I know what I'm talking about when it comes to all these fighters. I'm very knowledgeable in their history, their styles, martial arts in general. But for this fight, I just didn't have any time. Usually, I go back and watch a couple fights of fighters that I'm not familiar with. But I had a very, very busy week, and I've only watched 2 fights from Raffael Cerqueira over here. So in saying this, I wouldn't take anything that I have to say about betting seriously with this fight, okay? Because I am not educated on this fighter, and I always want to be honest with you guys in that sense, okay? From what I've gotten from him, okay, he is a well-rounded fighter. He excels at grappling. He has good chain wrestling. He has good scrambles. He keeps a good pace. On the feet, he is very capable, but he does seem to do his best work in grappling. He is undefeated, and like I said, I've only watched a couple fights from him, but he's coming to the UFC. I don't know why or how he got into the UFC, but it's always good to see him. Aslan, on the other hand, I am very, very excited to see. He's one of Alexander Rakic's training partners. He's an aggressive striker with good pressure. He has really good power, and he has great heart on him. It's always fun to see in a fighter, right? He's primarily a boxer. He can get caught up in brawls at times. Typically, though, he does pretty well when that happens. The only worrying thing about Ibo Aslan is that he has a worrying gas tank, okay? After the Contender Series, we saw him come in against Anton Turkalj and look really, really good. They came in, they swung wildly and got a knockout in the 3rd round. Like, even in that fight, man, I can't believe that it took 3 rounds for somebody to get finished. Like, it was a slugfest, man. In saying that, though, of course, Rafael Cerqueira hasn't faced any sort of level of competition. Ibo Aslan, we know, can hang in the UFC. He's training with some top guys. I like what I've seen so far from the last Auto Man, and I am going to be picking Ibo Aslan to get the win over here. I don't have any idea what the odds are going to be for this fight. Okay, they're kind of a pick 'em. Maybe I'm counting out. Maybe I'm counting out Rafael. Maybe, but regardless, going to be a really, really fun fight. Sorry about that. Like I said, I want to be completely honest with you guys on this channel, man. All right, guys, let's continue on up the card over to Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. I don't know what to think about this fight, man. I don't know. I think this is a very, very close fight in my opinion. So, you have Abus Magomedov, who's a powerful striker with some wrestling. He uses his reach really well, but he can pretty well be hit. We finally saw him get a win after the 2 rough losses he took to both Sean Strickland and Kyle Braujo, but these 2 losses have aged incredibly well. Incredibly well. Then he got the win over Warley Alves, but the problem is, it just still wasn't impressive. He took Alves down, grinded out a win, didn't look dangerous at all. He mostly just used some control and some ground and pound. Bruno Ferreira, on the other hand, is pretty dangerous. He's a powerful striker who moves forward, and he will throw with every part of his body. Sometimes he does wait too long to throw, to be honest with you. He also has some BJJ in his back pocket, but Bruno Ferreira is a strong finisher. After his first loss to Russo and Ruzi Boev, he came back and got 2 pretty nice wins, 2 nice TKOs, depending on how you want to look at the opponent level over here. Like, even just Phil Hawes, anybody could catch that dude and his lights can go out. I don't know what to think about this fight. I think this should be a little bit closer to a pick'em. Abus hasn't impressed me, and like, Bruno Ferreira has power, but can he finish Abus Magomedov? I don't know. This is going to be a really, really tough one. I'm going to lean towards Abus Magomedov for my pick. He is going to have his nice reach advantage. He uses his reach pretty well, but again, very, very tough fight to pick. His losses have aged well, too, depending on how you want to look at that. Let's take a look at what Odds Gym has to say about this fight, okay? I'm going to pick Abus Magomedov, but I'm unsure about this one, okay? Abus is sitting at a very, very slight favorite over here. Understandable. I think it's honestly, I mean, not that it's much off, but I would put it at a pick 'em from me personally, but it's going to be a weird fight. I don't know. I don't know if I'm necessarily excited for that one. I can see Abus kind of stinking it up. All right, guys, let's continue up the card to another absolute banger. We have Geoff Neal taking on Rafael dos Anjos. Both guys in kind of a must-win situation, in my opinion. But it is important to note with both guys, they have taken on, like, they are so much better in their records, man. They have taken on the top dogs of the division, especially Rafael dos Anjos, man. Geoff Neal as well, taking on amazing opponents, okay? Geoff Neal, he is a good volume striker with power behind his shots. He has really good takedown defense to keep things on the feet. He's very weird because sometimes he can show up and he's like really, really good at pressuring his opponents, and other times he can be a bit stationary. He does struggle, though, when his opponents are able to take charge of the pace and don't let him fight at Geoff Neal's comfortable range, okay? Rafael dos Anjos, on the other hand, he is a very complete, well-rounded fighter with pretty well, like, perfect technique in all aspects of MMA. Unfortunately, though, as we all know, Rafael dos Anjos is 40 years old. He is well past his prime. He's much slower now. The cardio is going a little bit, and he cannot keep up with most of the division. And he fought most of his career at 155. He's taking on Geoff Neal at 170 pounds. I hate to say this, man. I hate to say it, okay? But I gotta pick Geoff Neal in this fight. I have to. The reason that I hate to say it's nothing against Geoff Neal, but I'm such a big fan of Rafael dos Anjos. Been watching him his whole career, and I've always just cheered for him, man. One of the true BMFs of the UFC in Rafael dos Anjos. But I do not see him beating Geoff Neal here, even if he wants to get the takedowns. And like what's weird is like dos Anjos he's not completely worth counting out. Like he almost beat Mateusz Gamrot. He clipped him pretty good, but Geoff Neal, man, I just can't see it. Geoff Neal will probably fight at his pace. Geoff Neal will probably just pick Rafael dos Anjos apart and probably remain on the feet, even if Rafael dos Anjos wants to get close. I'm going to pick Geoff Neal to win this fight, but I hope I'm wrong because I really want Rafael dos Anjos to get the win over here. And you can see that Geoff Neal's sitting at a minus 280 average odds favorite over there, with the over 2.5 being minus 138. I don't mind that either, to be honest with you. I don't really see either guy finishing each other. I want to see what 1.5 comes out. That's kind of more my thing, but I am going to pick Geoff Neal, like I said, to get the win over here. Now, guys, before we move on to the main card, I want to stop you for just a second, but if you don't want to hear me yet, just skip a couple minutes. I talk a lot about betting on this channel, so if you are interested in seeing exactly what I'm doing with my money each week, or either that, or just want to support the channel in general, or want to combine my fight knowledge with your own research compared to what exactly I'm doing, I do have a channel membership option. It's right in the pinned comment description down below or right next to the subscribe button. It's extremely cheap compared to other channels. Every Thursday or Friday before the MMA events, I will be posting a community members post and a members only video telling you exactly what I'm doing with my bets. I say you should never blindly tail. Combine my fight knowledge with your own research, either that or if you would just like to support the channel. We also have OddsJam as a sponsor for this video. Thank you very much to OddsJam, by the way. But if you guys want to check out OddsJam, if you're a serious bettor with multiple sports books, it has all of the tools in the world, very, very fast at updating as well. You can check out my link in the pinned comment description down below and use code Clenbat. If you want to sign up, you will get a discount over there. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Let's get into the main card. Moving on up the card, and I just realized, too, we had the Fakhretdinov fight canceled. I thought that was still on, and it was incredibly disappointing. I had the Tapology page open, and I was like, oh. Anyways, Shara Bullet Magomedov taking on Armen Petrosyan. Shara Magomedov, guys, I think that he's a good fighter, but I think he's been overhyped coming to the UFC. Like, he's won his fights, he's done his thing, but people are advertising this guy like he's the next, like, absolute champion. He's taking on Armen Petrosyan, who I also think is a pretty underrated fighter. So, Armen Petrosyan, 8-3 record. He's been in the UFC for a while now. He's taken on some really, really good fighters, and he finally ended up, well, not finally ended up losing, but his last fight, he lost to Adolfo Vieira, and he just ended up slowly getting control in that fight. So, he's looking to bounce back, looking to get a win. Armen Superman Petrosyan is a kickboxer with really, really good fight IQ, and the necessary takedown defense and scrambles to keep things on the feet. When it's on the feet, he does a pretty good job. Shara Bullet Magomedov, though, a really great Muay Thai striker. He's very violent, very speedy, and he uses his leg really well. He does have improving takedown defense, but that still is an issue on his side, but he can offer resistance against BJJ. Not really that he'll need it against Armen Petrosyan, but he attacks from the back with just like violent intent. He'll throw elbows, he'll throw kicks, he'll throw anything from the bottom position. He, like I said, he's just one of those like really, really violent guys, okay? But again, I don't think that he's going to have to worry about that. This fight's probably going to remain on the feet. And I do think, especially with where they're fighting, that's something they have to take into consideration, especially throughout this entire card. Abu Dhabi will want their own fighters to win. I think that they'll have no problem getting a decision to Shara Magomedov. He basically only fights over there. And I would pick him to edge out a decision in this, but I will say, Armen Petrosyan, I don't know what the odds are. I would imagine that Shara Bullet is a pretty good favorite. I think this one is the parlay buster, or it could be the parlay buster, excuse me. I am picking Shara Magomedov to win, but I think Armen Petrosyan is extremely capable of winning this fight. In saying that, though, like I said, I'm picking Shara Bullet to win, and wrong OBS scene. One day I'll have these videos completely flawless, guys. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. Let me know if that's something you would like to see for an OBS scene. I also have this one that I don't use, but it's covering, and I have to edit it a little bit. I'm working on it, trying to become the best YouTuber that we could possibly be over here. But anyways, let's take a look over at OddsJam over here. I hope Armen Petrosyan gets the win. That's what I was saying. I'd like to see him get the win. And you can see that, okay. I thought that Shara Bullet would be a little bit more of a favorite, but it seems like people are kind of on tune and catching up to maybe where he falls into the divisions. So he's sitting at a little bit of a favorite right now. I personally am definitely not going to bet on this fight. The over 2.5 sit at minus 238. Makes sense to me too. I wouldn't touch this one, but again, I am picking Shara Magomedov to get the win. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's move on to the biggie because I am ready to receive some backlash for this one, guys. I'm feeling confident. Magomed Ankalaev taking on Alexander Rakic. Spoiler alert, I probably just gave it away, but I think that Alexander Rakic is going to win this fight. Okay? Let's talk Magomed Ankalaev. 19-1. He is absolutely no joke, okay? He's a very well-rounded fighter who has strengths both on the feet and on the ground. Great wrestling, great power behind his hands. Like, the dude is amazing at what he does, and he is absolutely a #1 contender. Alexander Rakic, on the other hand, I still think that everybody is counting out this guy like crazy, okay? He's a well-rounded fighter who on the feet has size, length, he uses his reach really well, he has good pressure, he has good power, he does a good job mixing up the attacks, especially with his kicks, and he does have a ground game to back all that up. I think he is a phenomenal fighter. Powerful. I know he's lost 3 in his last 5, I know, but take a look at this. Like, He won the fight against Volkan Ozdemir, 100%. That was a robbery, okay? Jan Blachowicz, you had the leg injury there. Yuri Prochazka, he was beating the brakes off of Yuri Prochazka until Yuri said, okay, I'm going to win. I think that he can absolutely win the title. I think I would pick him to beat Alex Pereira. I really would. I do think that Alexander Rakic belongs in the top 3 of the division. I think he's going to beat Magomed Ankalaev. I think he's going to chew up that front leg. I think he's going to keep him at bay. And I don't think that Magomed Ankalaev is going to take him down. I'm confident in saying I believe Alexander Rakic is going to win the fight. Watch this just completely go against me and him get knocked out really quickly. Could you imagine? But man, I've been excited for this one because initially when this got announced, my mind went Rakic is going to beat him. And I hope he wins too. I'm not saying that because I'm biased. Honestly, I like Rakic. I do like Ankalaev as well. Don't get me wrong, but I just think this is a good matchup for him, and I think that everybody is underrating him. You can see Rakic at a huge underdog right now. This is something that I am likely going to hit myself. And you can see over 2.5 at minus 125. I don't know how I feel about that. Definitely not round lines for this one. But I'm picking Rakic, man. I think he's going to win the fight. And I'm ready to hear the backlash on that one, man. I'm ready. Now, guys, let's move on to the featured bout on the card. We have Lerone Murphy taking on Dan Ige in my wrong OBS scene. Sorry about that. Lerone Murphy, guys, I was completely wrong about. I wasn't convinced that he was the real deal until he fought Edson Barboza, where he just recently destroyed him for 5 rounds. Multiple 10-8 rounds, in my opinion. The dude looked phenomenal. And I was wrong about Lerone Murphy. And I'm not that I said, he was overrated or anything like that. I just always thought that people were jumping the gun on Lerone Murphy, but I was completely wrong on that. Dan Ige, on the other hand, he's fantastic. He's coming off of the 3-hour notice fight against Diego Lopez. And I will say, though, Dan Ige, if this was a 5-round fight, he was going to beat Diego Lopez. He looked good in that fight, but I understand there were some specific circumstances over to that fight, so is that something we really want to take into consideration? This is a tough fight to pick, in my opinion. You have Lerone Murphy, very strong. He is a very, very good striker with good movement, power. He's extremely elusive, and he has one hell of a jab. He's great at what he does. Dan Ige, though, on the other side of the coin, a very well-rounded fighter, primarily a kickboxer with excellent speed, excellent power. He has all the heart, cardio, and experience needed to make him a dangerous opponent to go against. I'm finding myself in the same issue picking this fight that I did with Lerone Murphy's last fight. Last time I said he hasn't taken anyone like Edson Barboza. Now he hasn't taken on anybody like Dan Ige. Am I going to keep counting out Lerone Murphy? Because Dan Ige can beat anyone on any given day. He is a serious, serious contender. He might be able to strike with Lerone Murphy. But I gotta pick Lerone Murphy, man. He was so dominant in his last fight. He just might be the real deal. But Dan Ige, he's taking on a guy in Dan Ige who doesn't have the experience. This would be different if he beat a prime Edson Barboza, but he didn't. He's taking on Dan Ige, who is just exiting his prime, still looking great, though. So you could argue that Dan Ige is still in his prime, man. This dude has all the experience. He's seen Lerone Murphy's before. He can knock out Lerone Murphy. He can probably compete with him in the boxing. His hands are very crisp. He's been in there with guys, as of right now, better than Lerone Murphy. That's what's kind of stopping me. I think it's a very close fight. I am going to pick Lerone Murphy, though. I think I am officially on the hype train. I think it's a close fight. I don't think you should bet on this fight, but I'm going to pick Lerone Murphy to get the win here. But in saying that, though, guys, I really hope Dan Ige wins. He is becoming one of my favorite fighters, man. I have a huge list of favorite fighters, and Dan Ige is making his way up there. Always fun to watch, super respectable, especially saving the last card like he did. And you can see, OddsJam has it pretty close. Dan Ige's sitting at a little bit of an underdog. That makes sense to me, especially with the win that Lerone Murphy's coming off of. I don't mind that at all. I think it's a close fight, and like I said, I hope Dan Ige gets a job done, but Lerone has been looking fantastic. All right, guys, let's move on to the co-main event, that being why do I keep doing that? That being Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. Okay, first of all, I'm not going to believe that this fight takes place until I see Khamzat Chimaev walk into that octagon. I'm at the point with Khamzat Chimaev that I am with John Jones and Paulo Costa. Anyways, Robert Whittaker, one of my favorite fighters. He's a very complete fighter. He does a great job on the feet with his jab, blitzes, powerful low kicks, went on the aggressive. He is really, really fighting super well. There is controversy, though, on whether or not Robert Whittaker is chinny, because he visibly gets rocked in his fights, but then he survives. I don't know if I would consider that chinny when describing Robert Whittaker, but you get my point. Khamzat Chimaev, on the other hand, he's probably the best Sambo wrestler ever for one round. He does have power, he has great pressure, and his gas tank is extremely worrying, and that's where we saw him against Kamaru Usman. He started off the fight fantastic, but then as the fight went on, the dude's gas tank took a big halt. Now, there has been a lot of talk about Khamzat Chimaev really working on things and training insanely hard. I made a whole video talking about that and diving into what I believe his coach was saying about Khamzat Chimaev. But I need to see it first. I need to see him in the octagon. I need to see him look good in a fight that goes past one round, okay? He hasn't fought in almost a year. Robert Whittaker, on the other hand, after his loss to Dricus du Plessis, he came back and got two really nice wins against Paulo Costa and Ikram Aliskerov. This is a tough fight to pick, man. Really tough, because I imagine Khamzat Chimaev getting Robert Whittaker down to the ground at the beginning of the fight. The question is, can Khamzat Chimaev finish that fight? Even on the feet, like at the very beginning of the fight, Khamzat Chimaev does have some really good power. I think that Robert Whittaker, and I've been so back and forth, especially the first time that this was booked, I've been so back and forth on this pick. I keep thinking, though, I'm worried because the UFC wants Khamzat Chimaev to win, especially with where they're fighting. You got to worry about that. The MMA gods have not been nice to fan favorites as of recently, and I have a little bit of like a back of my brain gut feeling saying that Whittaker is going to lose this one. The more that I've been thinking about it, though, I think that it's more likely that Robert Whittaker survives against the first round and Khamzat Chimaev. It's going to be weird to see Robert Whittaker on his back, but I think Khamzat Chimaev takes him down, maybe has some ground and pound, maybe puts Robert Whittaker in some worrying submission threats, but I don't know, man. I just can't see him finishing Robert Whittaker unless it's by KO, unless it's by flat KO. But other than that, I see that Robert Whittaker would survive the second round, the third round, and then take over more and more as the fight goes on. And then I could see Robert Whittaker absolutely humiliating Khamzat Chimaev. It wouldn't look like the Kamaru Usman fight. It would look like an absolute domination, and he might even finish Khamzat Chimaev. Because as the fight went on with his Gilbert Burns bout, he won the Gilbert Burns fight, but that was a pretty close fight in itself. And he had issues as the fight went on. He can't have those issues against Robert Whittaker because Robert will kill him. So, like I said, it matters. It all comes down to, can Khamzat Chimaev finish Robert Whittaker in the first round? I personally think no, and that's why I'm going to pick Robert Whittaker to win this fight. I'm definitely not betting on this fight. Like I said, this might be the Alexander Volkanovski Islam Makhachev matchup where it just makes the whole world sad. But I hope Robert Whittaker gets the win. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. I'm going to give him a slight lean over here to get the win. Let's take a look at what OddsJam is saying. Khamzat Chimaev is sitting at a minus 211 favorite. I'm not even going to put any money on this fight even if I wanted to, because I don't trust Khamzat Chimaev to make it to the octagon. I don't think anybody should be betting on this fight. So, for that reason, we're going to continue on over to the main event. I am going to be picking Robert Whittaker to win this fight, though. All right, guys, let's move on to the main event. Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway. I cannot wait for this fight. This is a fantastic main event, and I can't wait to watch Ilia Topuria maybe continue his title reign. But he is a very exciting fighter. We all know Ilia Topuria at this fight. He is an extremely complete fighter with a boxing-heavy style. The guy can do everything, from heart to 5-round near-perfect cardio with perfect technique. Like, the dude seems like he very well could be the next superstar. He has steamrolled his way through competition so far, even finishing Alexander Volkanovski. It is important to note, though, let's be real, this was a past his prime, chinny version of Alexander Volkanovski. Max Holloway, on the other hand, having his second prime, career resurgence. He is a high-pressure, high-volume, aggressive striker with endless cardio. I would say nowadays that Max Holloway is more of a kickboxer instead of just a boxer, because he continues to improve and add new tools to his toolkit every single time that he fights. I always mention that spin kick. It's getting better and more accurate every single time that we see it. He's very experienced, he's been in there with the best, and he's shown no signs of slowing down just yet. Since his last loss to Alexander Volkanovski, he's came back and looked great against Arnold Allen, looked great against a Korean Zombie, and then had the phenomenal performance at UFC 300 against Justin Gaethje. In this fight, I know for whatever reason now, I don't know why, but everybody was looking at this fight and going, oh, Justin Gaethje's going to kill Max Holloway. Now that Max Holloway beat Justin Gaethje, I don't know why everybody's just turning around and saying, oh, well, it's a Gaethje past his prime. It was a bad matchup for Justin Gaethje. I know it's easy to say that in hindsight, but we were all saying that he was going to get KO'd. I'm seeing the same thing kind of now. Everybody's saying that Max Holloway is going to get KO'd. Could that happen? Ilia Topuria might be that guy to do it, okay? But I think it's important to note that I think that people are underrating this win against Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is a very capable and a very, very good fighter in himself. And Max Holloway put on an absolute clinic. My immediate thought after watching him fight Justin Gaethje was he would beat Ilia Topuria. That was my thought. Ilia Topuria is phenomenal, but I think Max Holloway is still getting better. He's had more experience. He has hit his second prime. He has the more 5-round experience than Ilia Topuria. He's been at this weight before. He's been the champion. He's been here many, many times. I think that Max Holloway is going to pick apart Ilia Topuria as the fight continues on. I could see Max Holloway really hurting Ilia Topuria with a body kick. I could see him maybe even adding new tools. Like, Max Holloway is still improving, guys. Ilia Topuria is phenomenal. He's a great fighter. But I think that Max Holloway is a little bit better, more experienced, higher volume, and I think that Max Holloway is going to beat Ilia Topuria. The question is also, is something stupid going to happen in this fight? Like, Ilia Topuria said he's going to walk out, point to the center of the octagon, and invite Max Holloway to slug it out. If Max Holloway's dumb enough to accept that, then we might see Max Holloway chin. So, if nothing stupid like that happens in this fight, maybe they'll do that at the end of the fight. But I'm talking like, if Max Holloway comes in on his game, and both guys just fight to the best of their ability and not just like randomly slug it out, I think Max Holloway will win over the course of 5 rounds. I'm feeling good about my pick there. But then again, Ilia Topuria, man, like, he seems like he could be the real deal and a champion for a very long time. The confidence level's on another level. I'm picking Max Holloway. I think Max Holloway is going to get the job done. And I hope he gets the job done. Like, I've really enjoyed watching Ilia Topuria and his rise and his journey as champion right now. I love watching him fight. He is so good at what he does. But I can't not cheer for Max Holloway, man. Let's take a look at the odds. I knew that Ilia Topuria was going to be a favorite. And Max Holloway sitting at the underdog. There's nothing really to note there. Over 3.5 rounds we have at minus 116. I don't mind that. I have a hard time seeing Ilia Topuria finishing Max Holloway, like people are saying. Like, it's important to note, guys. Everybody was saying this. Everybody was saying Justin Gaethje is going to knock Max Holloway clean out. I don't know why we're pretending like that didn't happen and Max Holloway didn't just put on a clinic. Now we're looking at it and go, oh, Justin Gaethje gets hit by every punch. No, he had a great fight against a guy that was supposed to beat him. And I'm seeing the same thing now. I'm picking Max Holloway. Guys, I can't wait to watch this card. I can't wait. It's so good. Let me know what you thought about all of the fights down below. What do you think about the picks? I'm ready to hear the backlash on Holloway and Rakic, though. I'm ready for it. Thank you so much for being here. Check out this video on screen right now. YouTube thinks you'll like it the best. I will see you in the next video, guys. Take care.